Hello, everybody.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
Okay, so let's start. So, how is it going so far? Let me switch on my video. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Now you tell me any problem, any issues to begin with. Are you able to follow the lectures?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So anything you could not understand or you have doubts?
Sir, I
Sir, in
have
the
doubt in fourth lecture, sir. Fourth lecture.
Okay. So what is that?
Sir, actually in fluid flow derivation,
Hmm.
uh, there is a pressure gradient dP by dx,
Hmm.
but we write it just P2 minus P1, but there should be P2 minus P1 by L,
Uh,
length of.
yeah. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So it's not there. You are saying?
Yes, sir. Not there, and sir, a minus sign, sir. Actually, and there should be minus sign also.
Okay. Let me see. Okay. So
Yes, sir.
okay. Let me share the screen. Just hold on. Okay. So you are saying the equation that we saw there was about, we said it was a Q, right? So we wrote Q, right? And I said that will be equal to, it should be like this. Actually, we write is a big Q actually. Yeah, so this is a big Q is equal to, it should be minus, and then should be pi, should be R4, yeah, divided by 8 mu, and should be dp over dx. So
D.
this is what the equation is, right? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. So like regardless of how it is written, you have to understand the physics, what it is the physics is. Okay. Okay. And
Yes, sir.
let's say we take a pipe like this one. Okay, this is a pipe here. And we assume this is P1, this is P2, the length is L. Okay. Of course, there is no L given here, but you can calculate the gradient. How? If you know, actually dP over dx will be equal to nothing but P2 minus P1 divided by L is the gradient. Yeah. Whatever the
Yes, sir.
pressure, whatever the pressure is here, and minus this one divided by L give you this gradient. Yeah. So dP over dx is like this. Yeah.
Yes. Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
Okay. So, and we are relating it. So if you see here, we can write Q equal to minus, in fact, you can write plus now and write pi r4 divided by 8 mu. And instead of writing this one, because we have minus here, we include minus here, and we can write it as is P1 minus P2 over L. Like, yeah. So what we see here, same equation, we are writing like this. Got it?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So what is the problem here? Which part of this you could not understand, or you think it's wrong?
Sir, actually, this Q will be Q2, sir.
This Q, you see, it depends on how you are looking at it. This will, let us say you are, this one should be the Q1 actually, yeah?
Yes, sir.
It should be Q1. This is Q1 equal to P1. So this one, that's why, okay. You don't be confused between which one will be what. I did just to make you understand. And don't forget the physics. And what is the physics? Remember the physics. Physics, flow from high pressure to low pressure. This is the physics. As long as you maintain this one, you will be all right. Okay. And what is the physics? Yeah, go ahead.
Sir, actually, a problem is that actually in a lecture, you left the L, sir, in lecture. But here you mention L divided by L. In lecture, there was no L.
Achha, okay.
In
So,
okay.
So there may be some mistake there. So I will check it. Okay. And accordingly,
yes, sir.
I can mention somewhere. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So
yes,
there may be some mistake, but you understand what is the meaning of this. Yeah. Right.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Sir, and second question is, why we use different kind of brackets for stiffness matrix and for displacement and force vectors, sir?
Okay. Okay. So this is because stiffness matrix, the is 2 by 2. This is like a proper matrix, right? So a stiffness matrix, we call it matrix, and this will have n by n matrix, right? And for that you have a square bracket I use. And when say vector, vector means it will have n by one dimension, and hence we use a curly bracket just to denote that this is one dimensional matrix, this is two dimensional matrix. Yeah.
Yes,
and,
sir.
Hence you have both of them, like this you have force and displacement both, and this will be a K.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Sir, and next question, sir. One more question. Actually, if we are analyzing 1D problem, there should be nothing in other direction. But when we take cross-sectional area, we consider second direction, that is normal to the plane. So how can we say that it is a 1D problem, sir?
Okay. So you are saying that the direction may change, that you are saying. So direction.
Yes, sir. Actually, we are taking a cross-sectional area. When we taking cross-sectional area, we take a plane that is normal to the surface.
Okay.
So how can we say that this is a one-dimensional problem? Actually, we are taking second direction also for cross-sectional area.
Actually, I'm not able to understand what you are saying. So what you are saying that area could be not always like this one, could be different also.
Sir, actually in 1D problem, there should be only line. So if we analyze line, then that will be 1D problem.
No, not like that.
Yes.
This is just the dimension. In real life, everything is 3D only. So from your perspective, every should be 3D only, right? The analysis should be 3D only. But it's not like that. So, for example, if you have a bar like this one, if you're applying force like this, you will say sigma equal to F over A, because for you, this is 1D problem. Yeah.
Yes.
This becomes 2D if you have like this. When in that case, what happens? Force can change depending on your Y, right? Here force is different, here is different, here different, here different, here different. This is 2D problem. Meaning that your force will also change as you change Y.
Yes, sir.
In this case, it does not happen like this. You are not giving any consideration to Y, as if Y does not exist. Here, Y does not exist. And in this case, Y exists. When Y does not exist means that this is 1D problem. When Y exists along with X, that means this is 2D problem. Okay?
Yes,
Tell me one thing. How do you know a function is one-dimensional or two-dimensional?
Actually, sir, when we apply a load and there will be a variable, and that means there will be change in another direction also, or one direction or third direction. So according to that, we decide this problem is 1D, 2D, or 3D.
Actually, that really means how many variables you have. So you have like this is X is this is independent variable, right? So you have one independent variable and you have a function fx. This you call it 1D. You have two x, y, and y. If function is of x and y, you call it 2D problem.
2D problem.
If x, y, and z, all the three are there, function is x, y, z, then you call it 3D problem. So if you are talking about here sigma, if sigma is a function, sorry. So if sigma is a function of x only, this is 1D. If sigma is function of x and y, this 2D. If sigma is function of x, y, z, this is 3D. So in this case, if you see, we are not finding what is the stress here or here. We are saying the stress is uniform for the whole section. Hence, it is 1D problem.
Yes, sir.
You got it?
Yes, sir.
Good
Yes,
afternoon, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, okay. Yeah,
Sir,
yes,
I have a doubt. Yeah, I have doubts, sir. In lecture 5A, sir, you have mentioned about stiffness matrix.
Yeah, okay.
Wherein your, let us say K11 is there. So K is the displacement and F is the measure, the force. F basically, right, sir?
Yeah.
So in this complete lecture, you are mentioning K is basically representing the force.
Right.
But if we see in unit wise, it is Newton per meter. So that is a doubt, sir.
Yeah, but remember that you have given just a minute. Let me switch off the. Actually, I'm hearing my own echo, so let me just a minute. Yeah, okay. Yeah. So remember that we are giving unit displacement. So those force that you are measuring is for unit displacement, right? So actually, Newton, actually the unit is not Newton, it is just Newton per meter, because if you double the input displacement, right, then you will get double the force. Got it?
Okay.
Yeah.
Unit displacement. It is a force required for unit displacement.
Right.
Am I right, sir?
Yes, true.
Yes, a second doubt in the same lecture, wherein you mentioned that for one directional problem. So let us say you have drawn some resistance circuit. It is in straight line. Two resistance are there. In second one, what you did basically, you just bend it by 90 degree. One resistance was there. So you told that in one dimensional problem, the direction of flow does not, matter. Right. So, and also you have given one example for pipe flow.
Direction of load, no. That I did not say. I said there's a difference between load or force and current. Yeah,
current
that's
flow.
different.
Direction of current flow will be material in that case.
Right. True.
So I'm coming to the point, sir. So next example that you have given for a pipe flow. So let us say pipe, some flow is happening inside the pipe. So a pipe is straight. Now you will bend the pipe, and when we bend the pipe, you are saying still flow will be same.
Right.
So, but logically, if we say we bend the pipe, then some losses will be associated with that, and the flow rate will also be changed.
Yeah. So you remember that we are simplifying, so your here the 1D, how do you do it? Like if you have a piping system, that will not consider all those losses, because this is solving a very simple problem. You got it? So let us say your piping system is something like this, which is horizontal, right?
Right, sir. Right.
All of them are same plane. In that case, it will not make any difference if you solve using the finite method the way we are solving. This will have the same results. It will not change anything. If you want to make it, like in 2D and 3D, then it will be more accurate. But actually, in this case, you can still assume, you can go ahead like this one, you can solve it, and you get the similar answer in both the cases. Okay, now in retrospect, I think probably this is not a good example. The good example to distinguish between the two should have been heat transfer. So basically, let us say there are two kind of pipes joined like this one, and if you heat it, let us say temperature, this is T1 here, yeah, and then T2 here. And then the kind of distribution you get here, and similarly you have T1 here and T2 here, and kind of distribution you get here, both will be the same.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So this is in contrast to force. When you apply if you give displacement,
that is understood, sir.
Then it will be different. Yeah.
Okay, right, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Okay.
Sir, suppose, sir, I have a question.
Yeah.
Sir, suppose we have a bar fixed at one end, free at another end. Load is applying axially, but the bar is taper.
Okay.
So, sir, how we can solve that kind of problem?
Okay. So this kind of problem you will get later on. It starts in chapter 3. Okay.
Okay, sir. Okay.
So you don't worry right now. Yeah. So we are right now, what you can do is, if you have a taper like this one, you can take the average area. So average area you can take, and you can find out based on that. You change A equal to A1, A2. You can say A1 plus A2 divided by 2. You can assume this, you can solve like this one. But this is not the correct answer. We will do that later on. Okay. So first we have to find out what is differential equation, and then we solve differential equation. Exactly what we will doing the same thing in chapter 3, 4, 5. Yeah.
Okay, sir.
Okay.
Sir, I have very basic doubt, sir.
Yeah. Sure.
Sir, in lecture 5A, you have given some example of truss problem. Right. Sir, as per my knowledge, sir, truss elements are subjected to the axial load. But यहाँ पे आपने sir mention किया है, it is bending load will also subject. When we apply the load in different direction, you have also given one example. Let us say element is inclined and we are applying two force. So that is a doubt, sir. In case of truss element, the elements are only subjected to the axial load. So can't we solve that element as a spring element?
A spring element, but see here, the way we have derived for a spring is something, all the forces are axial, right?
Right, sir.
But in truss, you can have one spring like this and one spring like this one joined together here.
Okay, external force are acting at some, okay.
External forces are at some angle.
Okay, right, sir.
So how will you solve it?
Oh, right.
So for that, you have to formulate.
This is with reference to external force that we are applying.
Right.
Okay,
yes.
Right, sir. Okay.
True.
Sir, just further to that, means when we derived the forces, means we fixed one end and the other was a roller support. So in that we have taken this 1, 2, 3, and 4. So at each end, are there two nodes? Or
No, only one node, only 2 degrees of freedom.
okay, so just 2 degrees of freedom, but there is only one node.
Right. True.
So, sir, the dimensions of the stiffness matrix, they depend on degrees of freedom rather than the nodes.
Sure. Yeah, that is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Yeah. Initially, we started with 1 degree of freedom per node, and hence I said you fix the other node. Later on, we had 2 degree of freedom. Then we have to say fix all other degree of freedom like that. So yeah. So we will see that later on also. Like degree of freedom will depend on the kind of variable. So for example, if you have the say a bar like that for temperature problem, for a heat transfer problem, you have only one variable, that's T. Regardless of whether this is like this or like this, doesn't matter. Still you have only one variable T. Yeah, temperature T1, T2. But when we are talking about the forces will have component. Here, as long as we are saying, okay, all the forces will be axial only, then we no need to consider the vertical forces. But when we tilt it, then things change, right? Then automatically, since structure is in 2D, the forces will be in 2D. If your structure is oblique, then it will be even 3-dimensional. Yeah, so you have to take all the 3 components and all.
Okay, sir. So it means in the previous ones, we were just ignoring the second degree of freedom.
Here you are saying?
Yes, sir. Means when it was just axial.
Okay. Yeah. Second degree of freedom, we are ignoring means it is not there at all. So why to waste time there?
Like yes, sir. Okay, sir.
Sir, in continuation, my earlier question. So let us say if I am resolving the force, so sine component and cos component. So this problem will become axial loading as well as transverse loading. I mean beam problem. So can we solve by making this component in axial as well as transverse direction by implementing the spring analogy and beam analogy in FEM?
Okay, actually it will not be a beam. So there is an essential condition for beam. Okay, so beam means there has to be bending moment. As long as if there is no bending moment, there is no beam.
Okay.
Yeah? But in this case, there is no bending moment. If you see why, because there are joints which will be pin joints. Right? So you have pin joints basically. So you have fixed here. So all truss will have pin joints at the end, and there is no loading here.
Okay, right, sir.
There is no loading in the middle, so there is no bending moment at all. If you apply force like this one, it will just rotate.
Okay, right, sir.
Got it. Yeah.
Sir, let us say if I am having a rod which is fixed at one end and applying the inclined force on that rod at the other end.
Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Like yes, in this way, sir. Yeah. So now this will have 2 components. One will be the perpendicular, and other will be along the axis.
Sure.
So, so this one can be solved by this horizontal line can be solved with the help of a spring element.
Right. Yeah.
And that is vertical one will be solved by beam methodology that we will teach in later on.
Yes.
Okay. Right.
True.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, just with this one that you just drew, so this one is a 1 degree of freedom, or means it is how we would go for it.
Okay. So all that will come later on. So what you see here, there are 2 forces coming. These forces here. There's another 2 forces here. So we see already this degree of freedom means how much it can move in this direction. This degree of freedom, how much it can go up and down. And there is also rotation will come into the picture, how much it can rotate at the same point, because beam will have rotation. This will have 3 degrees of freedom.
Okay, sir.
Yeah. So only beam, if you have just beam, meaning that there is no axial loading. All the loadings are vertical only, like this one, like the beam. Then it will have 2 degrees of freedom, right? And which one? One will be how much it can go up and down everywhere, right? And the third is how many it can rotate, right? Since bending moment, bending moments has theta the complementary displacement, right? So the force, if the force is downward, right? So there will be displacement downward, and there may be also the rotation as well. Yeah. So 2 degree of freedom for the bending problem, 1 degree of freedom from the axial loading. So total 3.
Okay, sir. But sir, in this means the independent variable is just x, right?
Independent variable is just x. Yes, true. Yeah, but here the forces are different. Forces are different. So here your so basically you have in this case everything is a function of x only. Everything is a function of x only, but there are different kinds of things at those. So you also call it vector field problem. Yeah, meaning that your domain is just x, one dimensional domain. So there are two things are now you are seeing. One is domain, means x, y, z, and second thing is the dependent variables. Dependent variables in this case becomes displacement in ux, all those uy, uz. This becomes or for beam problem, although you will have x only, but what you will have, you will have ux will be a function of x. Ux means how much you are moving this direction. Then uy, a function of x. Depending on the x, how the beam goes and up and down. And similarly,
Yes,
you will have theta. Yeah, theta will also a function of x. Means at this x, how you are moving. So your dependent variables, number of dependent variables in this case becomes a degree of freedom.
Yeah. Okay, sir. Yeah.
Sir, you mentioned that in case of bending, we will have 2 degree of freedom up and down. Let us say
no, up and down and bending means twisting the angle.
Okay.
An angle.
Okay. Right.
Yeah.
And for axial loading, it will be only in one direction.
Right.
Okay. Thanks, sir.
Yes. Yeah. Any other questions?
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, basically, if we have a 8 cross 8, suppose that 8 cross 8 matrix, so how can we solve analytically, sir? There is the near 64 elements.
Okay. Okay.
Suppose that this type of the problem is.
Yeah. Okay. So I actually I'm not like I don't expect that you will solve this big problem. So you will use computer. Okay. So this kind of problem you have to use computer to solve it. Use MATLAB or your own programming, Python or anything, C, C++, whatever you are comfortable with, you can use it. Yeah.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
And how we will solve it, we will look at that in the next coming on this week. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Next.
Sir, actually, in the last stage of the solution of the problem, after elimination method, when displacement vector will be 0, then eliminate first row and first column. Then we will get a 2 cross 2 matrix, in stiffness matrix into displacement vector equal to force vector. So to find out displacement vector, we inverse the stiffness matrix.
Right.
But in place of inversing that, can we solve it by converting it equation form? Actually, that is
yeah, you can do it. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So
You can
in this way,
definitely
we can
do it.
solve.
Hmm.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
So what you can do it, but like this will be a shortcut that will take you some time to actually solve that way. So this will be shortcut to what I have done, like writing in terms of inverse of a matrix. So this is the proper way as far as this class is concerned. Because computer also does like that only. It inverts the matrix. It does not go like one equation, two equation, then do like that. Yeah. So it will have a stiffness matrix and then invert it. But the thing is, you are compiling the stiffness matrix so that you just invert it and you get the answer. And if you are compiling that way and then you are going back to equation, then what's the use? Then you can have the equation to begin with, all the equations with you and solve them, no?
Yes, sir. Sir, but we have, if we have a 4x4 matrix or greater than 2x2 matrix, then there will be problem in inversing that matrix. So can we solve it by equation form? Because that will give same answer.
Yeah, but I expect that you will be able to invert 3x3 matrix.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So the problem I may give, which will have maximum 3x3 matrix inversion. Okay. After you taking care of all the necessary boundary conditions. So remaining
Yes,
matrix size to be inverted will be just 3x3, which is easy. 2x2 even more easier.
yes, sir.
So I expect that and like if we have later on some exam where you come here and take exam, I expect that you solve by inverting it. So you find out what is the inverse of that and you solve it, because that is the proper way of solving the finite element problem. Because for computers, it does not solve equation by equation, but it can invert. There is some algorithm, and just it can invert the matrix. And how it is solved also. In your solver also, it has the there is some algorithm for inverting a matrix.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Any other question, guys?
Sir, can you tell about degree of freedom a little bit more?
Okay. Degree of freedom, little bit more. So, okay. So degree of freedom, basically, it depends on basically which all things you are going to find out. Yeah. So in a way, how many displacement components it has at a point. Yeah. So basically, let me introduce one term is called one is called a scalar field problem. Yeah. And second thing is called a vector field problem. Okay. What is the difference? Let's look at your just temperature. Yeah. So temperature. Or in fact, you can also have, in your case, potential, right? So your potential. Yeah. So in the temperature is a scalar quantity, right? This is a scalar quantity. So that means if let us say if you have like a 2D plate, so temperature here and here, you have like that, right? So you have point wise, you'll have some different temperature. Similarly, if maybe 2D conductor, let us say, I don't know whether there is a term like that, okay? But let us say 2D conductor is there. So potential here will be different, here may be different, here it may be different, like maybe different place, there may be different potential. But so basically here the temperature, since temperature will be different, you have only 1 degree of freedom. Everywhere you have only 1 degree of freedom. And because everything depends on temperature, and temperature is everywhere, it is a scalar because of that. Now vector field is where you have a vector as a dependent variable. So let us say we have the 2D plate, and then example will be displacement. This point either go this way and this way also, right? So two direction. And you know that Newton's law, for example, says that it talks about direction, right? So I mean, here if you see that summation of the forces will be 0 is in this direction, summation of all the forces will be 0 in this direction and also in z direction. That really means all the 3 components are important. Means the one component can independently work, right? So that means the forces, or rather in this case displacements, right? Because this is displacement, and displacements are vector. Either you can, this point can go this side or come down or go up, and all of them can independently exist. So hence the degree of freedom in this case becomes 3 if this point goes in all the direction. So the problem we have been solving, where we have the axial loading, let us say here, then this point can go in only one direction, either this way and this way, but in x direction only it is moving. We are assuming it is going one direction only, and hence it has 1 degree of freedom. The moment we consider that no, I have a problem where it can go this way and also it can go up and down as well, you are increasing a degree of freedom, because you will have one displacement this way, you are second displacement this way. It has 2 degrees of freedom, and hence you have to solve differently because your degree of freedom is 2, and hence you will have say in this case you had u1, you have u2. In this case you will have u1 and u2 and u3 and u4. So here you had 2 by 2 matrix, here you will have 4 by 4 matrix. If let us say you also say this point can also go in other directions, then you can also have u5 and u6. So 6 direction it can move, and this can also move 6 direction. Hence you will have 6 by 6 matrix there for one element. So it depends on the number of dependent variables per node. Yeah. So those are the degree of freedom, and that will be reflected in your differential equation as well, and how to spot it. This will be more clear as we go to chapter 3, 4, 5 and more. You will see more, but mathematically probably we can relate. So let us say equation of, I'm just writing the equation, but I'm not solving it. I'm not telling you how you get. We will do later on anyway. So for temperature type of problem, heat transfer problem, yeah, one dimensional will be, say, or even 3 dimensional will be something like this. You have in 1D, this will be k del square t del x square plus a is equal to this, something like this one, where this is the temperature. Yeah. In 2D, it could be something like this: del a square t del x square plus del a square t del y square plus del a square t and del z square plus some will be 0, something like this it will be. Yeah. Okay. And what happens in the here you are relating it with here the temperature, only one temperature here, which is actually relating to all of them. Now, if we go to the structure type of problem, you will see that we will have different equation for different direction. We will have a total the forces in this direction has to balance basically. So what we have to see that the balance of forces, total forces in this direction will be zero when we write like that. Automatically the UX term will come into picture. When we have total forces going like this one, then automatically you will have uy, total forces has to be zero in the upper direction, in the vertical direction. Automatically uy will come into picture. So automatically these components will come into picture. But in this case, what you are getting is only temperature term will be there. There is no Tx term. You got it?
Yes, yes, yeah.
Yeah. So you have just only temperature. That's it. You have just one scalar that popping up here. But in this case, you will have ux term coming here, uy term, uz term coming here. That really means that all that point, same point will have ux also, uy also, uz also, means vector basically. So there is a variable here, which is a vector, which has this component, this component. But in this case, you have just temperature only. Got it?
Yes, yeah, yes.
Okay. So anyway, it will be more clear when we go forward, you know, so you will find it more, more clarity there. Yeah.
Sir, in case of this heat equation, so only 1 degree of freedom will be there.
Only 1 degree of freedom will be there. That's
Right.
true. Yes, yes. Yeah. Okay. And the problem here, it also comes from the physics, you know. So physics here will be what? In this case, total energy coming from x direction, total energy coming from y direction, summation of that should be conserved, right? That's what you see, right? Total energy conservation. So energy itself is a scalar quantity. Hence, you will have only one equation that actually sums up all of them. In this case, it says the forces in one direction will be zero, the forces of other direction will be zero, and hence automatically you will have two equations and so on, right? So hence your problems are different, and hence you will have different chapters to address them. You will see that for temperature type of problem, we will have different chapter for 2D problem. Same thing we cannot apply. What we can apply here can be applied to a scalar field problem only, but not to vector field. For this, we have to solve differently. We will see that. Okay.
Sir, last live session I could not attend due to some reason. So in that I have some doubt.
Yeah. Okay. Can I ask?
Sir, you have mentioned in somewhere in your notes many solutions we will achieve if K is symmetric. Some determinant of K is zero, stiffness metric. Could you please explain, sir?
Okay. So basically, you can, since you're a mechanical engineer, you can relate this way. Okay. So let us say there is one example where you have a spring here and we are attached here and we have applied the force here like this. Let us say K is equal to 2, right? And you applied a force F, right? So F is 1 Newton. Yeah. So your U will be, in this case, U1 equal to 0 and U2, this is force F, right? And U2 will be equal to F1 over K, which is 1 over 2, 0.5. Got it? So your solution of this problem is U1 equal to 0, U2 equal to 0.5. Yeah? This is what the solution is. Now, it's possible that we apply the same force. Let us say, if we just say like this F1 is 1 Newton, this is 1 Newton, and this is K equal to 2, and F1 equal to minus 1, and F2 equal to minus 1, plus 1. Difference between this and this, here we are saying specifically that U1 equal to 0, but in this case we are not saying equal, we are not specifying, can be anything. If U1 can be anything, our equations becomes K minus K minus K, K multiplied by U1, U2 equal to what? Equal to, you will have minus 1 and 1, right? That's what you have.
Sir.
Okay. Okay, so you have K equal to 2, and then you have 1, minus 1, minus 1, 1, and then you have U1 and U2. U1 was, U1 we don't know what is, U2 we don't know what is, equal to, if we have minus 1 and F1 is minus 1 and this you have, this is the solution, right? This is what it will be when U1 is not constrained, right? Got it? In the original problem, you have this 2, 1, minus 1, minus 1, 1, and then you are saying U1 equal to 0, and then you are know what the force is, F1, and this is equal to 1, like this one. Now, if you want to solve this problem, what happens? Can you solve this problem? In order to solve this problem, you are going to say U1, U2 equal to 1 over 2, 1, minus 1, minus 1, 1, inverse of that, and then you have minus 1, 1. But the thing is, there is no unique solution of this. I can prove to you. There are many solutions. And what is the meaning of many solutions? Let us say you have this spring, which is have force F 1 Newton. Here you have 1 Newton, and K equal to 2. You have this at roper. Same spring you can take, displace by, say 60 kilometer to Chandigarh. Okay, same forces, same thing, K equal to 2. This is still the solution. But regardless of what you are giving, if the solution here is, let us say, U1 equal to, say, 0, U2 equal to half, you add that to any value, say 5, you add to that any value, 5, meaning that if this solves, if U1 equal to 0, U2 equal to halves is the solution of this, this will also be the solution of that. What? 5 and 5.5. You can put that, you can find out. That's what I solved actually last time. Actually, I solved it to show that both will be the same. So boundary conditions, in both the cases, forces are satisfied. Both the cases, forces are the same. But see, it is a rigid, you also call it rigid body displacement, right? This is rigid body. rigid body movement or displacement displacement. Yeah, the whole thing can go. And so that it does not go, so that you avoid the rigid body rotation and displacement, you have to fix it. You have to specifically say, no, U1 equal to 0. Now you tell me what is the answer. Otherwise, it will be infinite answer, because you can give the rigid body displacement also along with the elastic displacement.
So what you want to say, it means I have to fix one end to get the unique solution.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other question? So basically, solution is relative. Basically, what you say if U1 is 0, if you are saying U1 is 0, then solution of this will be 0.5. If U1 is 5, this will be 5.5. So there's a condition. Always this will have 0.5 plus whatever the of this is. And you can solve it like this one only. Say, let's solve it that way. You have a problem, the same spring problem only, yeah, and you are giving that U1 equal to, I'm giving 5, this is K equal to 2 and force F2 equal to 1. Let's solve it, we can solve it. And U1 equal to 5 we are giving. So what is the solution? So we will have 2, 1, minus 1, minus 1, 1, and then we will have U1 equal to 5, U2 we don't know, and F1 we don't know, and F2 equal to 1. This is the solution, right? We are giving U1 equal to 5 now. Okay, now what happens? We cannot ignore 5 now, because 5 is there, because 5 will multiply here, 5 will multiply here. So in fact, this will be equal to, we can write it like this, just to show you. So 2, and then we will have 5 minus U2, right? So 5 minus U2, and here this becomes vector now. This will be minus 5 plus U2, right? Is equal to F1 and F2, F1 and 1. Basically, that will be equal to, we can have 1 over 2 here. So get rid of that. So what do we get? We get here 5 minus 5 plus minus U2 is equal to half F1, 1, like this. Next, so basically what we get? We get minus U2 is equal to, from backside, get F1 over 2 half minus this quantity, 5 minus 5. So we have 5 minus 5. This will be equal to F1 over 2 minus 5 and 5.5. What do we get? We get U2 equal to 5.5. So what is the inference here? When you said U1 equal to 0, your answer you got U2 equal to 0.5. When you gave U1 equal to 5, you get U2 equal to 5.5. Means, in order to solve, you need to know what is the value of U1, not solve, but in order to get the unique solution, you have to know what is the value of U1. Then only you can add to that U1, 0.5, you get the solution, basically, right? So if you are not telling, means you are not giving the boundary condition. You have a problem, but you are not giving boundary condition, then you can be anything. And if U1 is anything, that means it has infinite solution. Yeah, got it?
So it means to get the unique solution, boundary condition has to be sufficient in nature, or necessary boundary condition has to be given.
Yes. Necessary boundary condition has to be there. There has to be one boundary condition on displacement or temperature, whatever you are talking about.
Okay.
Otherwise, it is all relative. Our equation also, it says what? It says F equal to K times U1 minus U2, or whatever. So difference, the force depends on the difference. So whatever the difference, it will act on that, not the absolute value. And hence, when you give the absolute value of 1, you are fixing the solutions. And hence it's called necessary boundary. That's why it's called necessary boundary condition. It is very necessary to fix one of those dependent variables. Like you have to fix U at one end, or temperature at one end. Temperature also, if your solution, if you are solving a, heat transfer problem, then you have to give at one end temperature is this one. Similarly, if you are solving a current network, you have to give, oh, here potential is this. Potential, because current flows because of potential difference, not because of the absolute potential. Similarly, in all the cases. Yeah, got it?
Okay, sir.
Any other question? Okay. Any difficulty you are facing? Is the lecture clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Any other question? Just let me know.
Sir, here in this problem that we were discussing, here the stiffness matrix was identical, like all the elements were same in that, or like K minus K minus K, K we were having.
Right.
So like when we are solving for the trust problem, when the values can be different, then the determinant might not be 0.
No, it will still be 0. The determinant will be 0 when you have a symmetric, a square symmetric matrix. Determinant has to be 0. So
Okay, sir.
There's a mathematics. Yeah.
So that means that if the number of unknowns and the rank of the matrix are equal, only that many unknowns can be solved to get a unique solution.
Say again, man.
So like if the number of unknowns we have, like U1, U2 we are saying, and the rank of the matrix, both should be same, both should be equal to get a unique solution. Like, sir, in this problem we were giving a necessary boundary condition. So U1 is number of unknowns, we are reducing the number of unknowns.
Ben, don't think like that. I tell you, like since you are, which department are you from?
Mechanical.
You think this way, so let us say you have 1D problem. You are solving 1D problem. Then what happens? Regardless of if you have a bar like this one, only thing you need, if you apply a force here, what happens? This is a bar. You apply a force here. What will it do?
You'll get elongation.
Not elongation.
If it is fixed on the,
you are not fixing.
Okay.
You are not fixing.
It will start moving, sir.
Yeah, you cannot solve because lot of solution, because since we are not fixing here, hence it will move, and hence lot of solution, right?
Yes, sir.
Got it. Now what happens? Let's you are doing 2D problem now. Yeah. So 2D problem. Then what happens? Let's we have this like this one, and now you are fixing it like this one. Yeah. You are fixing it like this one. If you are like, but you can rotate. But if you apply a force like this one, will it move?
No, sir. Then it is a fixed
It will
problem.
not move. So you can solve this problem now.
Yes, sir.
But if you apply a force like this, will it move?
Yes, it will start rotating.
Start rotating. Hence, it's what happens? The number of degree of freedom you have changed accordingly. Accordingly, you see that things are changing here. Basically, you think physics. You think in terms of what you will need to fix it, and for that, for fixing this one, you have to fix like this one, meaning that you have to apply boundary conditions. What kind? This way you cannot move. This way also you cannot move, and rotation also cannot be done. And hence, all 3 degrees of freedom you are fixing here. Means that you need 3 boundary conditions. Got it? At this point to solve it.
Yes, sir. It's clear, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So that means the boundary condition will be based on how many degree of freedom you have. Got it?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. This will be more clear as you go ahead, So right now, your concern should be just to understand 1D problem only. And you know that only one degree of freedom is there in this case. And hence, you have to give only one what? Boundary condition, right? You have one boundary condition you give for the whole problem. Only one thing you have to fix or give some value, rest will be done. When there is a truss, accordingly you have to think, like let's say you have a truss like this. So you have a truss problem like this one. Let us say we have like this one. You can think yourself how many degrees of freedom you need to do it. Is it possible that you just fix this one in this direction? Sorry, should not have drawn like this. Let us say we are fixing, not this. What I meant is this. Okay, so you are applying a load like this. Yeah, we are applying a load like this one, let us say. Yeah, and this member is this way, but if your force is like this one, what happens?
It will move. It will not be fixed.
It will move, right? So hence, so that does not move, you have to apply. You have to apply a fixed.
Yes.
You have to fix this also.
Yes.
But let us say if you have just you have just move fix only this one only like this. Yeah. If you apply a load, what happens?
This is sufficient. It is sufficient.
No.
Sir, it is fixed here.
This is a hinge.
So it is okay. Yeah. Then we need to fix it.
In truss, you have hinge only.
Yes, sir.
This will rotate. Then what will you do? You need to have
one more thing. Yeah.
Here, right? So what you have to give in this case? See here, you have to give what is the force, what is displacement here of this, what is displacement of this here, what is at least 3 you have to give, so that in this case you will need to give 3 things.
3 boundary conditions.
3 boundary conditions.
Yes, sir. To get a unique solution.
Otherwise, it is not. It will move otherwise, and hence infinite. Otherwise, it will have infinite
solutions.
So this is a structure. So although it is a planar, this structure can move this way, and also rotate. So if you fix here and give a roller support, automatically it will stop. This one is not to move up down. Yeah, but this one to prevent this from rotation.
Yes, sir.
So hence you need 3 of them here. And you can see, unless you give 3 boundary conditions, you will not able to solve this problem. So this comes from the real life. If you see, actually you can relate, or don't go after mathematics, just see and see that like which all things will be needed to fix or prescribe in order to solve it. Got it?
Yes, sir. It's clear, sir.
Okay. Okay, guys. Any other questions?
No, sir.
Yeah. Okay.
Can you please
Okay.
send the recording of this session?
Yeah. So I will try again. You can see that it's being recorded. Last time, I don't know what happened. So this is very strange. But okay, I will post the recording if I get. So I don't promise, but I will. Okay. I will try what I mean. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.